All right, guys, we're going to start modifying our level collision generator. What we ultimately want to happen is we want to create a tile set in Gimp. We're going to use it to build a map in Tiled, and then we are going to build our level collision generator to pull the information from our tiled map so we can have it build. So stuff that we did where we were manually creating the shapes depending on if we're passing in, if they're going to be static or dynamic. We also were switching if we were going to do circle shapes or polygon shapes. We're going to have it do so much more than that. And so we're going to modify this, but basically where we got to kind of start so we can build basically just a test map. It's going to take a while for you guys to get a good tile set that you want for designing. So we're going to plug in a quick tile set. We're going to put it into tiled, and then we'll quickly just do some shapes and get it so it can go to our screen. Okay? All right. So to start off this video, we're going to play around with Gimp, getting that set up. So to create a new project, you're going to go to File, New, and the size, this one's just a test, but you can resize if you need to. So I'm just going to go for 64 by 64 pixels. I'm going to hit the drop down, and I want to make sure that I have fill with transparency. I really don't need to play around with any other features. Okay, so I have that. I can scale up. That's a little bit too big. Okay. Now, there's a couple things that I did to be able to see. I put some grid lines in. So there's a couple ways that you can do that. If you go to, where is that? Guides or configure grid, you'd hit this, and then you're choosing your grid. So you can have it solid. You could have the foreground color black. Might be better for us to do it as white. Okay. And we want our spacing, since our characters are going to be 16 by 16 pixels. Well, that's where we want our spacing. Okay. So we need to kind of remember this when we start building for padding and everything. When we pull it into our tile set. So if I don't need to have any offset, so I can go ahead and hit OK. Now, if you're not seeing your grid, there's a couple areas where you could go to make sure that you see. You can go to Preferences, and let me remember where I got to go. In Appearance, you can click the Show Guides and Show Grid. Make sure that that's selected, that's on, that's off. Okay, so make sure that you have that for normal mode and for full screen if you're going to use full screen. Okay, if you still don't see it, right click and go down to View, and you'll see here, if this is off, you may not end up seeing it. Oh, excuse me. Oh, it snapped a grid. I selected the wrong one. So if you have Show Guides off or Shift Control T, you could end up not seeing it. So you want to make sure that you have it selected in all those places. Okay. Now, for this, I'm just going to create a couple simple tiles. So I'm going to highlight it. It's going to snap it to the 1616. I'm just going to use a fill. I'm going to do two colors. Let's say I do blue, so it's pretty obvious. I'll fill that. Okay, and I'm going to do image, none. I'm going to select another one. and I'll do another color. Let's do this one. Okay, and let's draw something that we can put in the foreground eventually. So let's draw, let's do a tombstone. So I'm gonna go like a grayish color. Oops, I gotta shut my selection off. So if you use your selection, you can make sure that you're not drawing outside of your 16 by 16. So inside here, I could start drawing. If you choose to. Let's bring my hardness up. That's too high. Hardness. Bump up the hardness. We're dealing with pixels though, so it's not like we have to have it where it's smoothing it out. Ooh, that looks good. Most of the time I draw with the pencil tool. And we'll do a lighter color. That looks like crap. Let's do this for real. I want to delete it. All right. I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, so I have my brush set at 1 pixel. Let's bring that back down. Now remember, you're kind of doing a perspective from the top, so you want to kind of have that in mind. So let's see, 1, 2, 3. A little better. And we want to have an outside one. Let's bring that down a little bit darker. Oh, let's clean that up. Okay, and I think I'll actually do it like that. Do a little bit lighter. This is just quick down and dirty. Just want to show something that we can have it go in the front. This is all going to be filled in. So we want to design just a couple elements that we could have the player walk in front, walk behind. R. Yeah, I'll do it over here. IP. Okay. So let's see what that looks like backed up. I just erased too much of it. That's dumb. There we go. All right, so let's back up, see what that looks like. Not too bad. We could deal with it. Okay, so we have blue, we have green. Let's just give a border. I'll actually do this again. We'll do like half one. Select none, select again. This one we'll do like half. So we can make a little bit more. And then we'll do another one. None, select. All right. So super basic. We're going to save this, export this. Now, this is where I have had multiple problems if you do not do this correctly. You need to save this, export this into your assets folder for Android. If you don't, so you could open it, you could edit it, but anything that you're working on that is a work in progress, your tiled maps, if you don't do this, you're going to have all kinds of issues. So let's find, that is not it. Where is my Android Studio project? Nope. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to find it. Helps if I remember where I put it. Yeah, I put it right there. So I'm going to open this. I'm going to go to Android. I'm going to go to my assets folder. Okay, and this is where I'm going to put it. And I'm just going to call this let's just call it test map. Test tile set. Okay, and I'm exporting it into this assets folder. So let's go ahead and export. I want to save the background color because it is transparent. I'm going to go ahead and have it as all the other settings I'm leaving. Okay. Now I'm going to save this project also in that same folder. That way, if I want to modify anything else in here just for testing purposes, I could go ahead and do that. Redbeard run. Android. Assets. I'm just going to save it in here. Okay. Now in tiled, let's do new tile set. And we can just call this test tile set. Okay, and it's going to be based on the tile set image. We are not embedding it in the map. Okay, click source, find your folder and open that up. have to go down to users. Users. Big round. Android assets. Man, this is a lot. Okay. Now we want to use the transparent color. We can have it where we can just mark it where it's transparent. Or we can leave it off. We can kind of edit that. But our tile widths, we already know what they are. So we need to make sure that we're setting them. 16. And 16. Okay, now if I'm looking at my tile set, I do not have any margins. Okay, so on here, my margins are going to be 0. My spacing, I don't have any. They're butting up right next to each other, okay? So I can leave it like that. If you wanted to draw your stuff where you leave like a 1 pixel border, you can do that. You just need to make sure that you're accounting for it. Okay, so now I have a new tile set. This is going to be saving the tile set. So this also needs to go in my Android assets folder. Users. And I probably would create on my actual one that I'm going to be using for maps. Especially if I'm going to have multiple maps, I will probably create it in a maps folder inside here. But this is where we're going to save this. Okay, so now we have our tile set. That's where it is. I can zoom in. Looks beautiful. Okay, we're going to do File, New, Map. Okay, and we can leave pretty much all of this. We're choosing our size. Our tile size is 16 by 16. 16 by 16. Okay, and since this is just a test map, we don't need to have a really huge map for it. Okay, so I'm probably going to do, we'll just make a square map. Let's just say it's 40 by 40 tiles. Okay, so that means our map is 640 by 640 pixels. That looks good. Let's save it. We are going to save this as test map. Okay, and I have to also put this one in my Android assets folder. If you don't put them in the same location, your tile set, you're going to have issues finding the tile set, especially if you move your map afterwards. So that's why I'm saying you have to put it in your assets folder where you're going to use it, because if you try to move it later, it's going to have all kinds of issues. So since this is a test one, it doesn't really matter, but on my actual one, I am going to be putting it in the right location. So inside my assets folder, I would have another folder that I'm calling maps, and I'd put it there. Okay, so here's my maps. I can see it's giving me a width and a height, a tile width and a tile height, and I have different settings on here. I have my layers, I have my tile set. You can adjust around your windows. You could have a mini map open so you can see where you're looking at, especially if you're zoomed in. Okay, so I can kind of zoom in. All right, so to start off, let's say that we want to fill based off of my tile set. Let's zoom this in. All right, So if I wanted, let's do green as the border, I can quickly apply using the paint bucket, just like you would in almost any of your other stuff. You can apply a paint bucket, have it apply. There's a lot more stuff that I am still kind of playing with tiled, but what you can do with tiled is that you can actually set properties for the tile itself based on when you're dragging it in, and you can have certain parameters. I kind of do it a little bit manually so I have a little bit more control, but yeah, tiled is very versatile. Okay, so now I want a stamping tool. I'm going to use that blue and put it on my edge. So I'll do that one down here. Boom. Boom. Okay. Now, let's say I want this one. Remember, it's 16 by 16, so it's actually doing blue and green. But if I wanted to turn it, so now it's facing the right direction, so I don't have to make a lot of tiles to do different things. Okay. Let's just put a big thick border there. I'm going to turn this. Okay, so blue will be like my border that we're going to build for. Okay, and maybe I'm going to have some obstacles that I can't go around. That could be like mountains, water, any other obstacle that you don't want. Maybe I want some type of house or something. And I'll keep 2 tiles open for the player to go in. Okay, so trees. Okay, so these are representing those different things. Now I could go ahead and get my stamp tool for stuff that I want them to go in front of. This is where my layers are. So this is tile layer 1. This is going to be what I'm drawing. We can go ahead and rename that, and we could say that this is, like the base layer of our map, or the ground layer. Okay, so ground layer. Okay, so then I can go ahead and I can create another one, and I could call this one the, let's say, upper layer. And I could have multiple layers. So for my upper layer, that's something that I am going to want my player to be able to walk behind. I'm going to go ahead and throw them on. Okay. So what I did for these blue, like I can plan that I'm going to eventually be putting trees and get kind of a layout and replace that down the road. Okay, so I got a whole bunch of stuff that he can walk behind. I got stuff that he can walk in front of. Okay, these are just textures though. It doesn't do anything. If I want to build some type of interactiveness with it for Box 2D, I need to do object layers. Okay, so I could have, let's do a map. I'm going to do this all in caps. Map spawn layer. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do this one as, let's call it map, or just collision layer. Collision layer. Don't need to get fancy. Okay, so these are object layers. These are where I can actually create the objects. Okay, so before, when we were looking at Android Studio and we were doing a collision layer, we were basically just doing circle shapes and polygon shapes. But there are all of these shapes that we can do. So we can do circles, we can do polygons, we can do polylines, okay, rectangles, points, ellipse. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to start putting some borders up. So my collision layer, I'm going to go ahead and work with that right now. And I can shut off layers that I don't want to see. So for my collision layer, I want to actually draw a boundary around all the stuff that I do not want my player to be able to go past. So I can start marking points and drawing out my boundaries. Okay, so once you draw your boundaries, oops, I have to edit that. Then your player will be able to start interacting with them once we get it set up. So there's one. And I can click and edit points. So this point right here, I could right click and I could delete that node, and now it snaps back to where I want it. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and do another one. Put some boundaries in there. Now if it starts acting a little bit weird while we're doing this, I think, because it seems like it's not really snapping to the edge. Nope. Yeah, that's all right. All right, so we'll draw some more of these. Okay, so this is just using this one. This one allows us to make pretty much any polygon. I do got a rectangle though, so I could use that. And I could reshape it. So I could select. I could resize. Oops, give me that one. Width 16. Right. 16. Okay. There we go. That's the perfect size. Now I can just copy that one and paste it. Move that around. All right. Right there. Go ahead and delete those ones. All right. So now I have, for those, I can go ahead and do this. This, I'm probably going to want to use a polygon so I can adjust multiple points. Lock, lock. So building this way would make it a lot easier for you to customize your stuff and not have to do it so much in code. We're kind of abstracting it out into the tiled map to do it for us once we build it in code to start extracting all that information. So there's that one. All right, so there we go. That's our map. Let's go ahead and, because we're going to be doing this anyways, let's create a square. And all that this one's going to do is we're just going to pass in some data for the player. So I'm going to do some custom properties, knowing that we're going to be playing around with this later. So for my custom properties, I'm just going to call it spawn. It's a string, and inside I'm going to be holding player for that. And yeah, we could leave it at that for now. So now I have borders and boundaries for pretty much everything. Let's go ahead and draw a couple more just so we can see what they're doing. Let's do a circle, much larger circle, a medium-sized circle. Okay, because we want to make sure that Box 2D is being able to create all of those things. So I'm going to go to File and I'm going to Save All. So now I have my tile set. I got my test map. Now we are ready to start plugging into our collision generator and be able to test out that we got everything linking together before we start doing a full design on our map to test out this idea. Okay, so that next video, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing that stuff. All right, have fun. Good luck.